afternoon, everybody. We were there. The show that you're about to see was developed during my involvement as cultural director of the United Association for Labor Educators, Northeast Summer School for Women in Unions and Worker Organizations, a mouthful. Knowing our history has helped me understand who I am in this world as a woman, as a worker, and a human being concerned with the well-being of all. Today, some who hold or aspire to power in our country would like to go back to the days when workers had no say in their working conditions. Public workers are being demonized and robbed of gains we won through collective bargaining. Union workers are being blamed for our current economic crisis, and the rights of workers all over the country are being threatened. Despite the efforts of those who try to strip us of our rights, we are here today to carry on the legacy of our ancestors, to celebrate our unity, and acknowledge the power that comes when we unite as one. There are times we reach the edge of an opening, a breaking through, and we know the situation calls for something new. There are times we cannot see what's just ahead, but still we know there is a life to be led, a path to follow, and we must go, and we must go, and the ones who've gone before us will show us the way, and the ones who follow after will welcome the new day. The ones who've gone before us will join in the chorus when we do, when we make it through. There are times the burden's heavier than we can bear, but we hold on, 'cause we know there is a task at hand that must be done. There are times our worries build up and start to shake us, threaten to break us, till we remember it's only struggling through that will remake us, that will remake us, and the ones who've gone before us will show us the way, and the ones who follow after will welcome a new day. The ones who've gone before us will join in the chorus when we do, when we make it through. There are times it's almost easier to despair, to close our eyes, but when we look around, we see our numbers growing, we're on the rise. There are times we get so tired of waiting any longer, but we know we're building as we grow. grow. We're all getting stronger. We're getting stronger. And the ones who've gone before us will show us the way. And the ones who follow after will welcome the new day. And the ones who've gone before us will join in the chorus when we do, when we make it through, when we do, when we make it through.
I, Sojourner Truth, was born a slave in Ulster County, New York. My Dutch master named me Isabel Bumfrey. I saw my brothers and sisters sold off and myself sold with some sheep to a Yankee farmer who beat me for not understanding English. I was sold twice more before I was 12 years old. My master raped me and later married me to an older slave, Thomas, by whom I have 5 children. Although slavery ended by law in New York, this slave owner delayed my emancipation and sold my 5-year-old boy, Peter. I was freed in 1847. When I left the house of bondage, I left everything behind. I wasn't going to keep nothing of Egypt with me. And so I went to the Lord and asked him to give me a new name. And the Lord gave me Sojourner, because I was to travel up and down the land, showing the people their sins and being a sign unto them. Afterward, I told the Lord I wanted another name, because everybody else had 2 names. And the Lord gave me Truth, because I was to declare truth to the people. I am above 80 years old. It is about time for me to be going. I have been 40 years a slave, 40 years free, and would be 40 years more to have equal rights for all. I suppose I am kept here because something remains for me to do. I suppose I am yet to help to break the chain. I have done a great deal of work, as much as a man, but did not get as much pay. I used to work in the field and buying grain, keeping up with the cradle, but men doing no more got twice as much pay. We do as much, we eat as much, we want as much. I suppose I am about the only colored woman that goes around to speak for the rights of the colored women. I want to keep this thing stirring now that the ice is cracked.
My name is Charlotte Fortin, and I am a teacher from Philadelphia, one of 70 teachers who went south to the South Carolina Sea Islands in 1862 to teach as part of the Philadelphia Port Royal Assistance Project. I am the first Black teacher to participate in the experiment of educating ex-slaves. Planters there had fled when Union troops occupied the islands, and we seized the chance to begin educating the slave population that had been left behind. I was assigned to the island of St. Helene. I never before saw children so eager to learn. The older ones, during the summer, worked in the fields from early morning until 11 or 12 o'clock, and then came to school after their hard toil in the hot sun, as bright and as anxious as ever to learn. While I was in St. Helene, I used to spend time in Beaufort at Harriet Tubman's, also known as Moses. She has helped off a large number of slaves after taking her own freedom. She told us that she used to hide them in the woods during the day and go around to get provisions for them. How exciting it was to hear her tell her story.
night I dreamed I was in slavery. About 1850 was the time. Sorrow was the only sign. Nothing around to ease my mind. Out of the night, heard a lady, distant pilgrim band. First mate, she held pointing her hand. Make room on board for this young woman. Singing, come on up, got a lifeline. Come on up to this train line. Come on up, I got a lifeline. Come on up to this train line. She said her name was Harriet Tubman. She drove for the Underground Railroad. Hundreds of miles traveled onward, gathering slaves from town to town, seeking every lost and found, setting those free who once were bound. Somehow my heart was growing weaker, I fell by the wayside, shifting sand. Firmly did this lady stand, well, she lifted me up and took my hand, singing, come on up, got a lifeline, come on up to this train line. Oh, come on up, got a lifeline, come on up to this train line. She said her name was Harriet Tubman. She drove for the Underground Railroad. Who are these children dressed in red? They must be the ones that Moses led. I say, who are these children dressed in red? They must be the ones that Moses led. Singing, come on up, got a lifeline. Come on up to this train line. Yeah, come on up, got a lifeline. Come on up to this train line. She said her name was Harriet Tubman, and she drove for the Underground Railroad.
When the Civil War ended, women teachers, black and white, were the backbone of the Freedmen's Bureau. Converging on the South from all directions, we taught under the most difficult circumstances. The colored people are far more zealous in the cause of education than the whites. They starved themselves and went without clothes in order to send their children to school. A child 6 years old, her mother, grandmother, and great-grandmother, the latter over 75 years of age, commence their alphabet together, and each one can read the Bible fluently. Everywhere in the South, white opposition to our work mounted, and we were subjected to personal ridicule and disturbances at the schools. We could not get credit at local stores, could not find rooms to rent, and sometimes had to stand up to violence. Stones were thrown at students on their way to and from school. Bricks and missiles were thrown through the windows while schools were in session. A schoolhouse was broken open on successive nights for months. A white teacher was whipped in public. Another was run out of town. And several black families were evicted from their homes because they sent their children to school. Schools were burned, and threats of violence to teachers were common. But we knew we had to keep trying, and remembered the words of our sister Sojourner Truth when she spoke at the Women's Rights Convention in Akron, Ohio in 1851.
That man over there says that women need to be helped into carriages and lifted over ditches and to have the best place everywhere. Nobody ever helps me into carriages or over mud puddles or give me any best place. And ain't I a woman? Look at me. Look at my arm. I have plugged and planted and gathered into bonds, and no man could head me. And ain't I a woman? I can work as much and eat as much as a man when I can get it, and bear the lash as well. And ain't I a woman? I have borne 13 children and seen them all sold off to slavery. And when I cried out with my mother's grief, none but Jesus heard me. And ain't I a woman? Then that little man in black there, he says women can't have as much rights as men because Christ wasn't a woman. Where did your Christ come from? Where did your Christ come from? From God and a woman. Man had nothing to do with him. If the first woman God ever made was strong enough to turn the world upside down all alone, these women today here ought to be able to turn it back and get it right side up again. And now they are asking to do it. The men better let them.
I worked in the cotton mill all of my life. I ain't got nothing but a Barlow knife. It's hard time, cotton mill girl, hard time everywhere. It's hard time, cotton mill girls, hard time, cotton mill girls. It's hard time, cotton mill girls, hard time everywhere.
My name is Sarah Bagley. In 1836, I began work as a piece weaver at the Hamilton Manufacturing Company, a cotton mill in Lowell, Massachusetts. While working as a labor journalist with the Voice of Industry, a labor paper that called for reform and the 10-hour day, I held classes in my room at night, and I, along with 4 of my sisters, organized the women into the Lowell Female Labor Reform Association. 1 year later, I was elected president of that association. I have worked for 10 years in the cotton factories of Lowell. I have witnessed the growth of the factory system and of its evils, and have joined with my sister workers in efforts to improve conditions. In the strength of our united influence, we will show these driveling cotton lords, this mushroom aristocracy of New England, who so arrogantly aspire to lord it over God's heritage, that our rights cannot be trampled upon with impunity. When the company tries to fire any woman who has joined us in this 10-hour movement, we will make the name of him who dares the act stink with every wind from all parts of the compass.
My name is Mary Harris Jones. I was born during the rebellion in the County Cork, Ireland in 1830. My grandfather was hanged for his part in that rebellion. I was nearly 50 when I took up the business of agitating to improve labor conditions. My mind is kept constantly on the alert, coping with difficulties, planning campaigns, organizing work along the lines, and with striving better present-day working conditions. I have no time to think about getting old. Besides, I have a lot to accomplish yet. I began organizing for the Knights of Labor, and my work brought me out to Colorado, where I first met me boys, the coal miners. They call me mother, and I call them me boys. And it's true that I have been given most of my time to the miners' organization, but I do not belong to any individual organization or creed. I belong to the workers, wherever they are in slavery, regardless of their trade or what their craft may be. A lady is the last thing on earth I would want to be. A lady is a parasitical outgrowth of the system we live under. I call myself a hell raiser. I belong to the class which has been exploited, robbed, plundered for centuries, and because I belong to that class, I have the impulse to go and help break the chains. I remember what happened on September 23rd, 1913. The strike began and continued for 15 months. I was 83 years old, but then fought alongside the miners, and I was arrested 5 times. What would the coal mines be worth if not for you? If you did not take the coal out of the mines? But the miner is cheaper than the mule for the coal company. One brother said he got a fair pay. I want to ask you what he calls a fair pay for a miner. You produce $10 a day and you get 1/10, and the other fella gets the balance of it. Do you call that a square deal? Don't fear anybody. You create the wealth. So I say, let the fight go on. The producers, not the meek, shall inherit the earth. Not today, perhaps, not tomorrow, but over the rim of my years, me old eyes can see the coming of another day. Sisters and brothers, I ask that you pray for the dead, but let's fight like hell for the living.
Which side are you on? 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 Come on, all you poor workers, good news to you I'll tell, how the good old Union has come in here to dwell. Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
The membership in our union at Lowell is between 400 and 500, and our numbers have been daily increasing, and our meetings are generally well attended. The humble efforts of a few females could not be expected to move the world in the day, but God be praised. We have moved the minds of the community to think and speak on the subject. This is truly encouraging. For when we can arouse the minds of men and women to a sense of their own individual rights and cause them to think from themselves, then they will begin to act for themselves. Too long have the poor been looked down upon as a lower race of beings. It is now up to the working men and working women of these United States to turn things around. And in doing that, the masses will bring about a new dawn. We spinners shall unite by organizing associations throughout the country. We hope to roll on the great tide of reformation until from every fertile valley and towering hill, the response shall be echoed and re-echoed. Freedom, freedom for all.
As we go marching, marching in the beauty of the day, a million darkened kitchens, 1,000 mill-lofts gray are touched with all the radiance that a sodden sun discloses. For the people hear us singing bread and roses, bread and roses. As we go marching, marching, we battle to form it. For they were once our children, and we mother them again. Our lives shall not be sweated from birth until life closes. Hearts starve as well as bodies. Give us bread, but give us roses. As we go marching, marching, unnumbered women dead go crying through our singing their ancient cry for bread. Small hearts and love and beauty, their drudging spirits knew. Yes, it is bread we fight for, but we fight for roses too. As we go marching, marching, we bring passing of the human race. No more the drudge and idler tend that toil where one reposes, but a sharing of life's glories, bread and roses, bread and roses, but a sharing of life's glories, bread and roses.
My name is Pauline Newman. I'd like to tell you about the kind of world we lived in over 100 years ago, because all of you probably weren't even born then. That world was a world of incredible exploitation of men, women, and children. I went to work for the Triangle Shirtwaist Company in 1901. The corner of a shop would resemble a kindergarten because we were young, 8, 9, 10 years old. It was a world of greed. The human being didn't mean anything. The hours were from 7:30 in the morning to 6:30 at night when it wasn't busy. When the season was on, we worked until 9 o'clock. No overtime pay, not even supper money. My wages as a youngster were $1.50 for a 7-day week. I know, it sounds exaggerated, but it isn't. It's true. If you worked there long enough and you were satisfactory, you got 50 cents a week increase every year. So by the time I left the Triangle Shirtwaist Company in 1909, my wages were up to $5.50, and that was quite a wage in those days.
My name is Rose Scheineman. I'm a garment worker and have organized garment workers for years. It is my friends and sisters who died in the Triangle Shirtwaist Company fire 2 months ago. We will never forget March 25th, 1911. We will never forget the 146 workers, mostly women and girls, who died in a fire because they could not escape the flames. The company had locked the doors to the stairs from the outside to prevent employees stealing or escape. The fire ladders could not reach that high. There were no fire extinguishers, and there was only one fire escape, which would have taken 3 hours to empty the building. I could see smoke pouring from the 8th and 9th floors. That was where Triangle Shirtwaist had its rooms. The faces of young women pressed up against the windows, hundreds of screaming heads. At one window, a young man helped a girl onto the sill and let her drop, as gently as if he were helping her into a streetcar. That's when I heard my first thud. He brought another girl to the window. She kissed him. Then he held her in space and dropped her. In a flash, he was out in the window himself. The girls had no other way out. The thuds of the falling bodies grew so loud, I thought they'd be heard all over the city.
In the heart of New York City, near Washington Square, in 1911, March winds were cold and bare. Fire broke out in a building 10 stories high, and 146 young girls in those flames did die.
I remember when we walked out in 1909. It was after the call at the local 25 of the International Ladies Garment Workers Union meeting. Sister Claire Lemlich rose to speak, stating, "I am a working girl, one of those who are now on strike against intolerable conditions. I am tired of listening to speakers who talk in general terms. What we are here for is to decide whether we shall or shall not strike. I offer a resolution that a general strike be declared now. Thousands upon thousands left the factories from every side, all of them walking down toward Union Square. It was November. The cold winter was just around the corner. We had no fur coats to keep warm. But the young people, mostly women, walking down that day didn't care what might happen. The spirit, I think, the spirit of a conqueror led them on. We didn't know what was in store for us. Didn't really think of the hunger, cold, loneliness, and what could happen to us. We just didn't care on that particular day. That was our day.
So tonight we gather at the Metropolitan Opera House to demand a fire prevention bureau, more factory inspectors, and compensation for the families. I would be a traitor to these burned bodies if I came here to talk good fellowship. This is not the first time girls have been burned alive in this city. Each week, I must learn of the untimely death of one of my sister workers. Every year, thousands of us are maimed. The life of men, women, and children is so cheap and property so sacred. There are so many of us for one job, it matters little if 146 of us are burned to death. We have tried, you citizens, you of the middle and upper classes, and we are trying you now. You have a couple of dollars for the sorrowing mothers and daughters and sisters by way of a charity gift. But every time the workers come out, in the only way they know, to protest against conditions which are unbearable, the strong hand of the law is allowed to press down heavily upon us. I can't talk fellowship to you who have gathered here. Too much blood has been spilt. I know from my own experience, it is up to the working people to save ourselves. The only way we can save ourselves is by a strong working class movement.
There were many conditions the women would not tolerate, and we continued to organize. Now, in 1915, we were not supposed to talk about sexual harassment or sexual orientation. It's supposed to be a secret. But what's the secret? You and I know about it. We've experienced it. We're supposed to be ashamed. I lived for 56 years with my partner, Frida Miller, raising a child together, and both of us fought for women's and workers' rights. I am not ashamed. I am angry and fighting for our rights. My friend, Rose Schneiderman, told me a story I want to share with you. While she was organizing the Aptheker garment shop, she heard that Mr. Aptheker, the boss, had a habit of pinching the girls whenever he passed them. They, of course, wanted it stopped. Rose went to see him and told him that this business of pinching the girls in the rear was not nice, that the girls resented it, and would he please stop. He was a rather earthy man and looked at Rose in amazement and said, "Why, Miss Schneiderman, these girls are like my children." Rose said, "Mr. Aptheker, we would rather be orphans," and the pinching stopped.
There once was a Union babe who never was afraid of the goons and ginks and company finks and deputy sheriffs who made the raid. She went to the Union Hall when a meeting it was called, and when the company boys came round, she always stood her ground. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union. Oh, you can't scare me, I'm sticking to the Union. I'm sticking to the Union till the day I die. This Union maid was wise, took tricks of company spies. She couldn't be fooled by the company's stew. She always organized. She always got her way. When she struck for higher pay, she'd show her card to the company guard, and this is what she'd say. Oh yeah,
Can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union.
yeah, I'm sticking to the union.
Oh, you
Can't scare me, I'm sticking to the union. I'm sticking to the union till the day I die.
I was born a slave in Texas, 1853, a descendant of African, Native American, and Mexican ancestors. After the Civil War, I worked in the Freedmen's Bureau. I have fought against the injustices of poverty, racism, capitalism, and the state for my entire life. My name is Lucy Gonzalez Parsons. I was forced to move to Chicago by my husband, Albert Parsons, in 1873. He was a white man, and there were laws against intermarriage, and he was registering Black people to vote. In Chicago, I began organizing sewing workers and led thousands of them out on a strike on May 2nd, 1886, as part of the nationwide protest for an 8-hour day. My husband was one of the founding members of the Chicago Trades and Labor Assembly. On May 4th, 1886, he spoke at a demonstration in Haymarket Square, sanctioned by the mayor of Chicago, protesting police attacks on the 8-hour demonstration the day before. After we left the demonstration, a bomb went off, killing one policeman and several workers, and Albert was eventually imprisoned and hanged, along with 4 other men accused in the bombing. When I begged to see him on this last morning, the police strip-searched me and my children and threw us naked into a jail cell. They let us go once he was dead. A few years later, the governor pardoned everyone else who was charged that day for lack of evidence. I made my living as a dressmaker to support my 2 children and continued speaking out. The Chicago police characterized me as more dangerous than 1,000 rioters. I, along with Mother Jones, was one of the 2 female founding members of the IWW, the Industrial Workers of the World, commonly known as the Wobblies.
Her union speech at age 15 ignited a sensation. Girlie was her given name, but not her reputation. She won fame as a firebrand with wisdom to bestow. The world would be a better place if workers ran the show. In New York hotel kitchens and near New England smokestacks, with Minnesota miners and southern lumberjacks, she journeyed round the country without breaks throughout the year, and in Lawrence, Massachusetts, reached the peak of her career.
In 1907, I became a full-time organizer for the Industrial Workers of the World, the IWW, also known as the Wobblies. My name is Elizabeth Gurley Flynn. The IWW began organizing among immigrant workers, foreign workers, many of whom came off the boats. In fact, many of these big companies actually imported them. When I was in Lawrence, Massachusetts in 1912, I saw posters that had been put up in Montenegro, a small country in southeastern Europe. And these posters showed the workers of Lawrence, Massachusetts, coming out of the mill on one side with bags of money under their arm and going into the bank on the other side. Well, naturally, when you lived in the sparse hills of Montenegro, that was quite an inducement. They recruited from all over, wherever workers and their families lived in poverty. In the city of Lawrence alone lived 25 different nationalities who spoke 45 different languages, but hardly any English.
The textile mills of Lawrence made the owners' pockets full, but little reached the poor mill hands whose looms produced the wool. The wages were abysmal, families barely stayed alive. Nearly half the deaths in Lawrence were of children under 5.
Never be deceived that the rich will permit you to vote away their wealth. We, the women of this country, have no ballot even if we wish to use it. And the only way that we can be represented is to take a man to represent us. You men have made such a mess of it in representing us that we have not much confidence in asking you. We are slaves of the slaves. We are exploited more ruthlessly than men. Whenever wages are to be reduced, the capitalist class use women to reduce them. And if there is anything that you men should do in the future, is to organize the women.
What precipitated the big strike in 1912, known as the Bread and Roses Strike, which is one of the great historical struggles in our country, was a political act on the part of Massachusetts. The hours of labor were reduced from 56 to 54 hours. That was only for women and children, but it affected something like 75% of workers in the mills. After the laws went into effect, the mill owners sped up the work. The workers waited to see if their wages would be cut, as well as their hours. When the first paycheck came, it was short. Wages averaged $8.57 a week at that time. The cut in wages meant the difference between mere subsistence and starvation. And so the melting pot boiled over and workers poured out of the mills. The American Federation of Labor didn't want to have anything to do with them, so they sent for the IWW.
Opposed by all the instruments of power and persuasion, the militia, press, and clergy, and the state administration, Gurley and her comrades organized the teeming throng, and the strikers held together more than 20,000 strong. Then Gurley planned an exodus of strikers' kids from town to stay with Union families till the mayhem simmered down. Some were beaten with their mothers in a brutal police raid, but most went to other cities and were greeted with parades.
A protest and a roar went out from one end of the country to the other. The result was a congressional investigation, and the conditions of those workers were so exposed to the whole country that the employers were only too happy to call it a day and bring the strike to a close.
They marched along the boulevards, appearing near starvation. Their emaciated bodies spurred the outrage of the nation. The bosses caved, they knew they'd lost, undone by their own sins. And the kids returned to Lawrence to celebrate the win. At the tender age of 16, she was tough as powder blasts, a tireless defender of the hurting working class. Her will belied her stature, and she taught the bosses fast that even with a size 6 boot, it's still called kicking ass.
My name is Ai-jen Poo. I've been honored to organize immigrant women workers in New York since 1996. I helped start Domestic Workers United, an organization of women who work in other people's homes as nannies, housekeepers, and caregivers. These are the women who work makes others' work possible. They started coming together in church basements and community centers to share their stories and to give each other support in their struggle, to earn better wages, to learn how to communicate with their employers, and to assert their rights to basic dignity on the job. Domestic Workers United helped organize the first national meeting of domestic workers. Most of the women at that convention were immigrant women of color. We translated the proceedings into 7 different languages and came up with a list of what we felt we needed to give us the dignity we deserve. We formed the National Domestic Workers Alliance, and in April 2010, I became the director. We are an alliance of 35 local organizations in 11 states and 19 cities, advocating for protection, recognition, and respect for the 2.5 million domestic workers in the U.S. We had a major victory in the state of New York in 2010 when we built a powerful coalition and won passage of the first Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights.
De colores se visten los campos en la primavera. De colores son los pajaritos que vienen de afuera. De colores es el arco iris que vemos lucir. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Canta el gallo con el kiri, 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 kiri. La gallina con el cara, 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 cara. Los polluelos con el pío, 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 pío. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí. Y por eso los grandes amores de muchos colores me gustan a mí.
When I began organizing, I had already 6 children and I was pregnant. My name is Dolores Huerta. I had a lot of doubts to begin with, but I had to act in spite of my conflict with my family and my commitment. My biggest problem was not to feel guilty about it. I don't anymore, but then everybody used to lay these guilt trips on me about what a bad mother I was, neglecting my children. My own relatives were the hardest, especially when my kids were small. You know, I had 6 and 1 on the way. I was always driving around Stockton with all my little babies in the car with different diaper changes for each. Of course, I was afraid of everything until I did it. I started out every time not knowing what I was supposed to do and scared to death. When Cesar first sent me to New York on the boycott, it was the first time we've done something like this. There were no ground rules. I thought 11 million people in New York, and I had to persuade them all to stop buying grapes. Well, I didn't do it alone. When you need people, they come. You find a way. It gets easier all the time.
The domestic work industry is a microcosm of the triumphs and failures of our society as a whole. Everyone relies on domestic work in one way or another. Yet, it is too often erased from our consciousness and denied respect and legal protection. poverty-level wages, grueling hours, and a lack of benefits, training, and advancement opportunities mean turnover is constant. Yet, just like the farm workers, domestic workers have been excluded from collective bargaining and labor rights. In our campaigns, we work for a society and economy where everyone's human dignity is recognized and everyone's work valued. I hope to see the contributions of domestic workers acknowledged and the protection of our national and state labor laws extended not just to domestic workers, but to all excluded workers groups. My mother and my grandmother were strong, wise women. I believe that if we could just see the world through the eyes of women, we'd have a much clearer picture, both of the problems of our society and the solutions.
Every single day when we sit down to eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and at our table, we have food that was planted, picked, or harvested by a farm worker. Why is it that all the people who do the most sacred work in our nation are the most oppressed, the most exploited? The great social justice changes in our country have happened when people came together, organized, and took direct action. It is this right that sustains and nurtures the democracy today. The civil rights movement, the labor movement, the woman movement, and the equality movement for the LGBT brothers and sisters are all manifestations of these rights. Every moment is an organizing opportunity. Every person, a potential activist. Every minute, a chance to change the world. We as women should shine light on our accomplishments and not feel egotistical when we do it. It's a way to let the world know that we as women can accomplish great things. We must use our lives to make a better world, a better place to live, not just to acquire things. That is what we are put on this earth for.
We have plowed and we have planted, we have gathered into barns, done the same work as the men, with babies in our arms. You won't find our stories in most history books you read. We were there, we're still here, fighting for the things we need. We were there in the factory, we were there in the mill, we were there in the mines and came home to fix the meals. We were there on the picket line, we raised our voices loud. It makes me proud, just knowing we were there. From the textile mills in Lawrence to the sweatshops in New York, from the fields in California where our children had to work, we fought to make a living. Bread and roses was our cry. Though they jailed and beat our body, our spirit never died. We were there in the factory, in the mills, we were there in the mines and came home to fix the meals. We were there, we raised our voices loud. It makes me proud, just knowing we were there. We were Polish, we were Irish, we were African and Jew, Italian and Latino, Chinese and Russian too. They tried to use our differences to split us all apart, but the pain we felt together touched the bottom of our heart. We were there in the factories, we are doctors, we are cooks and engineers, letter carriers, truck drivers,